We don't want to see the CCP's way of life overruling the people of the Solomon Islands.
Daniel Suidaani, the former premier of the Solomon Islands Malaita province, became a hero among China watchers after he challenged the Chinese Communist Party's influence operations in the region, refused a bribe, and barred CCP-linked companies from operating in his province. Punishment came swiftly. He was ousted from his position, and when he fell ill and needed brain surgery, he was denied access to care, until Taiwan finally came to his rescue. I had the rare opportunity of sitting down with Suidaani and his advisor, Celsus Talifilo, when they were on a trip to the United States.
That's the only thing they talk about, that China is there to help. And it's been promoted so much beyond anything else.
This is American Thought Leaders, and I'm Yanya Kellek. The story of Daniel Suidaani and the Solomon Islands is a window into the Chinese regime's tactics across the Pacific, and even its tactics in North America, as it expands its influence, bribes the powerful, and co-opts strategic resources. In 2019, the Solomon Islands, which had long recognized Taiwan as the true seat of the Chinese government, switched this formal recognition to the People's Republic of China. Recently, Parliament voted to delay elections to accommodate a big event funded by China, the Pacific Games. There's evidence that the parliament members who supported the change each received about $24,000 US from a CCP-linked slush fund. Premier Daniel Suidaani, such a pleasure to have you on American Thought Leaders.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much.
Well, welcome to America. And I was very happy to hear you yesterday testifying at the Congressional Executive Commission on China about what's happened in the Solomon Islands, about the Chinese Communist Party influence in the Solomon Islands and the big changes that have happened there. I want to go back to 2019. You wrote the Auki Communique, and the Auki Communique basically said, number one, that you don't want the province to be working with Chinese Communist Party affiliated companies. And number two, you highlighted how the Chinese Communist Party in China is an atheist enterprise, whereas Malaita province at the very least, or perhaps all of Solomon Islands, is a Christian enterprise, and to watch out for that. So tell me a little bit about how this came about and what happened.
So we come up with a communique, a set of principles that we believe can guide the people in future developments. We have seen the destructive way, dishonest ways that these Chinese companies involved in the provinces, and particularly in Malaita, that is very destructive and more exploitive in a way. They've been getting resources. They don't care whether it damages some environmental things, as long as they got what they want from the people. That's all they want. Malaita provincial people are Christian people. They believe in God. And the CCPs, which commonly known as the communists, they don't believe in the same principles and the values and the truth that we have believed. We have faith in it. So it would be very difficult for us to work together with two different values, two different beliefs and faith. Second element of the communique is the provincial government will not allow any company that link with the CCP. We must make sure that a company that will operate in Malaita must not relate to a CCP connected, companies in the province.
Something that was very significant that you did was there was this, loan which was provided from China, something to the tune of $66 million for 27 Huawei cell towers to develop in the area, and you blocked that. And I think it was from that moment that things started to change for you. Can you tell me about that change? What happened?
They forced the non-executive government motions of no confidence against our government, which I believe I am the only premier phase 3 motions of no confidence. And the latest one that I was ousted is more likely that is one of the reasons for them to put the motion against me.
beforehand, from what I understand, you were very popular premier, popular member of parliament. Of course, you were elected premier, so that means you must have been popular. But then, how is it that you actually would lose a vote of non-confidence? How did that happen? Because there were 3 of them, like you said, right?
Because the whole aim of the government is to get the Chinese companies into Malaita. They would like me to be out from the premier's office so that they can come in and do their developments in whatever way they want to do it. So I believe they are behind the motions in order to allow the way for Chinese companies to come.
And so those parliament members that voted in these non-confidence motions, why would they vote against you?
Well, the non-executive members, they're the members of the Provincial Assembly. They were there because of, I believe, they were handpicked. Some of them non-executive attend some programs with the government, and they were given money to withdraw from my government and to join the non-executive in order to oust me from being a premier. So they did, and they paid them $10,000 each member of the non-executive, and they joined the other side of the house to vote me out.
Tell me a little bit more about Malaita province and why you decided to go into politics in the first place.
Malaita province is a province that believe more in communal and tribal working together, and they believe in resource sharing as a tribe. What I've seen in the past, before I become a premier, before I was, become a member, I've seen that members before me, people just come in and, get salaries for their own benefit, but they haven't even introduce or produce any ordinance at all to safeguard the resources and the people of the province, and even the involvement of other businesses so that they can be something that indigenous people can involve and get their future out of it. So I came in, and we are the first province to introduce the logging ordinance that will safeguard our resources. The way these contractors or the Chinese people doing logging, they don't care about anything. They don't care about the environment. They move machineries into the streams that people used to drink, and they're not giving water tanks or other things to people. So this is something that is very sad. They don't care about the damages caused for local indigenous people and their livelihood. So we need to see that if any genuine company to come and do development, it has to have some set of rules abiding them so that they can do things that is not destructive, development that doesn't cause disunity, and people can receive the resources for future generation. Another thing is retailing. Retailing, it should be for indigenous Solomon Islanders. There's a reserve business that should be given to Solomon Islanders, but we have seen these Chinese people, they involve more in these businesses, and they push away the Solomon Island and the Malaitans in particular in Malaita province. No space for them to involve in such a business. The way I see it, once we don't careful or we don't talk about these things, we will end up having all Chinese people running businesses in the Solomon Islands.
How big is the investment from China?
I cannot tell you exactly how big, but what we have seen is that, from the whole town of Honiara, we haven't seen any local Solomon Islanders with bigger buildings, investment in Honiara city. And like in the provinces as well, when these Chinese people came, they pay off properties in the headquarters, like in Auki. So they are the ones building huge buildings in the capital at the moment. So it's huge with the investment they've had in the country.
I want to talk a little bit about, at one point, you needed some pretty serious medical care. And normally that would be funded by the government, but this was denied from you. Can you explain that to me a bit?
I've got a doctor's report when I was sick, and that report by the doctor said that I must go to get my medical treatment in overseas countries like in Australia. So we wrote that letter, the doctor wrote the letter, and we gave the letter to the Ministry of Provincial Government, hoping that they will finance my trip to Meta Hospital, but they decided not to support my medical treatment. So I believe with that, because I was talking to a member of parliament, and they said, if you can go and shake hands with Manasseh Sogovare, you will be funded to go to overseas for your medical treatment. And I said, oh, I can die here without shaking his hands. That's okay with me. But I stand for the rights of my people.
But in the end, it was the Taiwan that offered to support your medical treatment, right?
Yes, they do.
After you went to Taiwan for your treatment, there were articles written in, I think, the biggest Solomon Islands media by the editor of that media, who is also part of, let's see if I've got this right, the Solomon Islands China Friendship Association, or like one of the leaders of that group, alleging that, you know, you had actually gone to Taiwan to organize a hit squad to take out the prime minister that you mentioned earlier.
Yes, that was the article published in the Solomon Star at that time, and that's what they said. My coming to Taiwan is not for medical treatment; it's to arrange some, collude with the Taiwanese government and U.S. They said to assassinate the prime minister. It was all false. I was in Taiwan for medical treatments. So they did say that in the media, and they wrote so many things about me, all false. They don't have the facts of the things that they talked about. But that's how they are doing the news article front page all the time about me colluding with the Taiwanese government to assassinate the prime minister.
Why do you think they did that?
I think this is the way so that the government can arrest me for doing some illegal, activities like the one they mentioned in the Star.
What would you say is your biggest fear for the future?
My biggest fear, actually, is that if we are not careful about the way we deal about the CCP, we'll end up like other countries in the Pacific and in the world that has been overruled by CCP. The government at the moment depends entirely on the influences from the CCP.
Do you feel like your life is in danger?
Yes, because at the first place they have been trying to find facts of things so that they can arrest me for it. So I'm very fearful of the things that is happening right now. But I'm going to stand for what I believe in, even if it's hard on me and my family. It's what we stand for. So yes, I'm being very fearful, and my children too.
Where do you find the strength for this?
The strength I have is from my people. They are with me, and we are together fighting for this. Because if we don't fight, if we don't talk about these things, in the future it will be very dangerous for us. So I am encouraged, and I'm having the strength with my people that this is the right thing to do.
So you're here, of course. We're here sitting in front of the Capitol in the US, but you actually had some trouble getting your visa approved.
Getting a visa to come to US for me is quite difficult. So, well, we follow the procedures. We apply for a visa, we answer the questions, but then when I first get an interview, it was denied, and there's no reason, but they give me a paper saying that you haven't got the evidences to prove that you are maybe coming back to the Solomon. So they give the denial document with my passport back without saying anything. But we have the help from the congressmen and the women helping me out. So behind what is happening with the first interview. That is something that I don't, understand.
A lot of people may not understand how rare it is to take the stand that you did with the Aki communique. Why is it only Malaita, you think, that has that sort of a communique?
Being a leader, you need to listen to people. So I listen to people who have the same thinking, and they share with me, this is how our government should lead our people. I have a set of, team who can advise me on good things as well, and the people of the province. So that's, we create this principle stand because I'm listening to the people I'm representing.
So, you're here with your advisor, Celsus Talifilo. And so tell me a bit about him.
Celsus used to work for the central government. He used to work in parliament for quite some time. So a province like Malita needs such people like him. So we work from 2019 to this day, even if I'm out from the government, we are still advising us on things that is happening in the province and in the nation.
Celsus Talifilo, such a pleasure to have you on American Thought Leaders.
It's a great pleasure to be on the show.
So you're an advisor to former Premier Daniel Suidaani. But before that, you were actually an advisor to the Prime Minister of the Solomon Islands. So tell me a little bit about how that happened, the change.
Yes, so before I went to Malaita, I was the coordinator of the policy that we put together under the current government. I went back to join the Premier's government because of the diplomatic suites that have happened. If one knows about the history of Solomon Islands, we have had an ethnic crisis from 1998 onwards. And during that time, one of the only countries that have helped indeed, apart from Australia and New Zealand, is Taiwan, that have accepted a loan to pay the lost properties of those who have lost their properties during that crisis. So one would say during the darkest times of our history, Taiwan was there. And when the diplomatic switch happened, it was not very respectful. In fact, the Prime Minister sent the Foreign Affairs Minister a week before the diplomatic switch happened to Taipei. And I think after that, Taipei sent their Foreign Affairs Minister to Honiara and was not received in any official way at all. So the whole scheme, in my view, was very disrespectful. And government can be government, but human beings are more than the government.
Why do you think China is so interested in the Solomon Islands?
There could be reasons for resources. There's no doubt about that. The logging industry in the Solomons, 80% to 90% of the logs ended up in the Chinese market. So that's in terms of resource, that's big for them. And in terms of our imports too, it's like 80 to 90% of the imports from the Solomon Islands is from China. So sort of like we export one product that is log, primarily to the Chinese market, and we import from them. Their companies also operate in the mining industry. So they have a interest in trade with the resources that we have in the Solomons. Fisheries, Solomon Islands is among a number of countries in the Pacific that have good fishing grounds for tuna. And maybe there is no doubt that they are looking for a strategy to dominate the place, dominate the region, and therefore the ambition, they would like to be the superpower more than America. So it could mean that dominating the Pacific could allow them to, posture themselves as a world power that can face up with America.
So, in fact, I've had a number of people on this show, China experts, who have talked about the strategic importance to America of many of the Pacific Islands, including the Solomon Islands, and what happens if the CCP gets influence there and especially establishes a military presence, for example, right? So how big has the change been since 2019, which was this switch, the diplomatic switch that you described? How big or quick even has this change been in terms of CCP influence since that time?
It's since the diplomatic switch, the amount of information that has been played out in the media in the Solomons is huge, to the extent that that's the only thing they talk about, that China is there to help. And it's been promoted so much beyond anything else. The Pacific Games, they are the ones who will build the stadiums. Of course they are. It's promoted by the government that the Chinese will bring a lot of investment into the country. So far, in terms of infrastructure, its companies are operating in the Solomons, but not with Chinese money. They are using, the opportunities under World Bank projects, and even Solomon Island funded projects. So their companies are actually winning tenders to develop these places. I think the only two big investments so far in terms of direct involvement with the government of China is this stadium and the building of dormitories of the university, the local university. So I think those has always been reference in the support that China give directly. Otherwise, there are companies believed to have connection with China that are operating in one of the provinces, example in Renal Bellona, where they involved in bauxite mining. And some local companies registered locally, but I think has connections to Chinese that are interested in nickel mining in other 2 or 3 provinces of the Solomon Islands.
So there's a lot of Chinese activity, but a lot of that is funded through World Bank and other development loans and this like.
That's right. Before the diplomat switch happened, companies like CCECC and China Harbour is already in the Solomons, and they were there on tenders, under tenders of World Bank and Asian Development Bank, or even some are Solomon Islanders, but mostly World Bank. So they were already there winning tenders for bridge buildings, road building, and those things. I think after that, when the diplomatic switch took place, there was this other company they call the SAM Group that is interested in developing Tulagi into what they call a economic zone, building structures of wharves and other things. At that time, there's a lot of speculation around that, saying that this company is actually has close ties with the People's Republic, PLA,
People's Liberation Army.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that too, there was some concern by ordinary people that what is published in the papers seems to suggest that this is not really an ordinary company. They have deeper connections that might not be good for us. So that's one of the reasons why the whole thing in Tulagi ended up being put on hold, because of the publicity of the company relating to military.
So there's this situation in with the federal government postponing the current elections, actually by modifying the Constitution with a 39 out of 50 vote, right? So tell me about that.
I remember when I was still in the Prime Minister's office, the conversation about the extension of Parliament was sort of like discussed, but has not taken any prominency. But after the switch, and then the Chinese were building the stadiums, somehow the discussion suddenly popped up again for the amendment of the Constitution to allow for the government, the Parliament, to have an extra 7 months before dissolution in December. And the reason behind that was it would be very difficult for the Solomon government to host 2 big events in a year, and that's the general election and the Pacific Game. So that's the reasoning that they said. But one would see that if you calculate correctly the current life of Parliament, it should be dissolving somewhere around May. And then new Parliament should come about somewhere around after September, even before the Pacific Games. So the argument that they say that there has to be a government in during the games has no grounds. When you look at the actual timing, yes, there would be a new government before the event happened. So what's the reason for extending Parliament?
What do you think's going on?
I have had connections in the police. They heard from the politicians that the reason was China was quite afraid. Otherwise, if the elections happened before the games, the new government might make a decision to oust them. It might mean, because of what is happening outside of government, there are people who are complaining a lot, public, in the local social media about China and China and the government. So it is likely that there might be a new government that might not be friendly to China.
Are you concerned that they might be extended even further?
Of course, I am really concerned. The fact that the government can amend the Constitution for a sporting event, what is stopping them from doing for another reason? They now have 39 members, that's 2/3. The requirement under the Constitution is for an amendment of that provision to extend the life of Parliament is 2/3. They have the numbers. They have done it already. There's every chance that they can do it for another reason. If the current government has a reason enough to say that they might lost in the coming election, they might find other reasons to prolong Parliament until they feel confident that they can win the election back again.
And my understanding is that there's some evidence that the CCP has kind of provided funding to these 39 out of 50 members.
Yes, there were well-published lists of members of Parliament that are supporting the amendment, though most of them from the government side, that have given money from the Chinese slush fund. It's in the tune of 200,000 per member. So that payment was made just the motion, so the amendment was made. So it's like a rewarding those who have participated in amending the Constitution. Because one of the backbenchers of the government who refuses to support the amendment has not received anything. He was on the original list for the payment, but when the payment was done, he was not, because he didn't support the amendment.
So you're saying that only the people who supported this amendment got such money?
That's right.
Anyone who didn't support it didn't get it?
You can't get anything. Has not got anything.
When you decided to come work for Daniel Suidaani, what was the effect on your, I guess, professional life, your personal life? Because he was already, not so popular among some of the powers that be, right?
Yes, so I think when the things started to happen, I felt that it's time to stand out and be real about what you believe in. That, yeah, government is a government, elected, but I think the object of a government is to save the people, not to save themselves, and make decisions that they feel is popular within the government, but not within the country. So I felt it's time to save the country, especially the province that we come from. And because as indigenous people, that's our place, that's our land, that's our ancestral place. So if we make bad decisions, like what we've seen in Honiara, that the land used to be customary land belongs to people, but with bad decisions, most of the land in Honiara now being bought off by Chinese people because they were the ones who have money, especially in the prime sites. So what you are saying in terms of Malete is there should be a good scheme of arrangement where when you bought land, you bought it correctly and done it properly.
If you were speaking to the Americans or the Canadians, watching this show, what would you say, number one, is the sort of importance of the story of the Solomons?
Although things have looked quite bleak in terms of democracy, but we still believe in democracy as a system that allowed even indigenous communities, their values and what they have, still flourish under the system, democratic system, whereas that would be difficult under a communist system. So that's an opportunity for Western world, especially America and Canada, to continue to work on that opportunity that is still existing. While China might come with money, I still believe that in as far as the systems are concerned, our people still hope or are looking for systems that would adore what they have rather than destroy what they have. We have not seen communism popularized around the world. It's not a system that people, especially indigenous people, would love to have because it will destroy them.
The freedom here in America is the founding father of freedom and how people live free. Even if we are a small society, we need the same freedom that the Americans have. So if there is a way possible that Americans see fit to help out in some ways, that would be something great for Solomon Islands as a country.
What would be a good way they could help?
I've seen getting the people of Solomon Islands engaged and then having them visible on site in the country is something great in terms of economic development and other things that would, remind the people that Americans are still here, even if they have been after the World War II. We need to have them seeing the Americans with, developments that attach to life of the people, so that they can, have recall America and see America as someone who can help out in these situations.
And if there were some Solomon Islanders that watch our interview, what is your message to them?
My message to our families and brothers from the Solomon Islands is that we need to have a clear understanding on the issues of the democracy and the issue that with the CCP. We must not, stay blindly. So I call on the people who understand democracy and the CCP to advocate strongly for what is good for the country.
Well, Premier Daniel Suidaani, such a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all for joining Daniel Suidaani and me on this episode of American Thought Leaders. I'm your host, Jan Jekielek.